Yeah, one of the last sessions of the day. My name is Andreas, I work in field engineering, and I'm delighted to present this talk and welcome Leon and Antonio to the stage. One of the most common questions that I get in the field when talking about governance is actually how well Databricks works with Collibra. So without further ado, welcome.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Advanced Governance with Collibra on Databricks. My name is Leon Eller, and I'm a solution architect from Sydney, Australia. And with me, I've also got Antonio Castelo, who is a Collibra integration architect in Spain. So we're gonna be doing a bit. Antonio's going to be doing a bit of a demo for you to actually show how the integration actually works as well. But before we get into the demo, I just want to set a bit the scene in terms of why data and AI governance is complex today. So usually with organizations, on the left-hand side, you have a bunch of data consumers, some human, some non-human, and they would be accessing multiple different data sources. So we've got data lakes, we've got data warehouses, so it's unstructured data, structured data, AI platforms for accessing ML models and maybe features in the feature store. And of course, you want to do some reports, you'll be accessing BI dashboards as well. So that makes the job of a data governance team more complex because when it comes to data lakes, they have to deal with permissions at the file level. When it comes to data warehouses, they've got more fine-grained permissions at tables, rows, and column masking. When it comes to AI platforms, it could be a different AI platform in the organization, and you're dealing with permissions on ML models and various features in the feature store, and of course, when it comes to reports, you've got to set permissions to that as well. So you've got multiple different ways of doing that. And of course, that leads to a number of different issues. So you end up with a fragmented view of data and AI estate on behalf of data consumers. And that, of course, slows down the pace of innovation. And of course, having different tools to be able to define and manage your access to the data can potentially reduce your trust in data governance and lead to increased risk of data breach as well. You've got incomplete monitoring and visibility, and so that could potentially lead to non-compliance risk as well. And there's generally a lack of ability to share data in a cross-platform way. So this is where, and you would have seen Matei's keynote address today, this is where Unity Catalog comes in with Databricks. So it gives you this unified governance layer across your data estate, as well as your AI and ML models. And the features, of course, that it has, you can see it there. You know, we've got obviously permissions you can assign, so we've got access control. You're able to visualize data lineage and see how data goes through different stages of transformations. Data discovery, and as well as model discovery, and in fact, we've got discovery across a number of different things in the Databricks ecosystem. So whether it's notebooks or workflows, etc., you can also now have tags on your model as well and discover those. Quality monitoring, and of course, we've got Delta sharing, which allows you to share data with other organizations, other entities, and they don't even have to have Databricks at their end. Now, of course, you would have seen Matei presenting, data federation, but of course, you could have scenarios where you would have other data warehouses in your ecosystem. You've got Unity Catalog with Databricks as well, but you might be running ETL in those other data warehouses as well, and of course, that requires a separate governance tool as well. So you can have Unity Catalog integrate with Collibra as well. So we've got open APIs. And you can have Collibra directly integrate and surface all the metadata and be able to actually drive Unity Catalog to define access control policies as well. So that kind of gives you the ability to deploy data governance across your whole enterprise. Great. So we'll get on with the demo. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you what we're going to end up with. So I'm going to ingest some data. And we've got a pretty sort of simple retail model here. We've got a star schema dimensional model. We've got fact sales. These are all of our transactions. And then we've got around that various dimensions, product, store, customer, date dimensions. And then Antonio is going to demonstrate how Collibra can drive data governance. We've got a number of different use cases we can demonstrate and driving data governance across this model with respect to visualizing data in dashboards. So if I'll go to the, put my glasses on. So when it comes to data ingestion, as you can see here, is that sort of big enough for everyone? Yep. You can see here, you can ingest your data in multiple different ways, right? So one would be Delta Life table. That's probably the simplest way you can actually get data ingested into Databricks. And what that will actually do for you is it will work out all the different dependencies between the different steps of your transformations and actually give you a visualization like that and tell you in what order all of the different steps need to run. Of course, the other way you can do it is you can do it with workflows. So if I switch to workflows here, and click on one of the runs I've done before. Now what you can see here is a similar kind of model that you saw before in terms of the different transformation steps. The difference here is that I had to split each of the steps of the transformation into separate notebooks, effectively, separate pieces of code, and I had to define the dependencies myself here. So with Delta Life tables, you don't have to worry about that. With workflows, you might have to configure that yourself, but you kind of end up with the same sort of view of what actually happens as part of your ingestion. So I'm not going to run the ingestion right now. I've done it before in the interest of saving time. But what that will look like is, if I go to, oops, if I go to my data tab, where's my data tab there? So what you can see here, I've got a catalog called main. I've ingested some data here, and you can see I've got some bronze tables. I've got some silver tables, and I've got some gold tables. You know, I've got dim customer, dim date, dim product, etc. And basically now I can actually start to define, we've got a new feature where you can actually start adding tags to my model, and I can start to define permissions. But we won't do it through Unity Catalog today. What we will demonstrate is how Collibra can actually drive Unity Catalog after we've created our data model. So over to Antonio to do the demo.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for coming today. So bear with me a second. Need to move and change this. Well, can you hear myself? Just a second. Okay. Good. So there will be no slides for me, so I will actually demo the application and everything that has been done. So before I actually start, I would like to know, is anyone here not familiar with Collibra? Or I don't know if I should be asked the other question, which is, anyone here familiar with Collibra and what we've done or what we do? Okay, there's a few. So before I actually start and show exactly, the session today is all about what we can do with respect to Databricks and the exercise that Leon has just shown. How can we actually take that, all of that schema that has been recently ingested, and what sort of information can we actually derive from all of that stuff? What can we actually learn from everything that is done there, okay? So the ultimate purpose is to actually go and do things like ingestion to classifications, to profiling, to enforce policies, data access policies in Databricks. Now, I believe we do have time to actually show a lot of that, but we'll see how that works. Before I do that, Collibra, okay? So for those of you that don't really know what we do, very briefly, I don't really want to go into much of a pitch here, but you can see that Collibra or Collibra Data Intelligence Cloud, as the name suggests, a cloud solution application, a cloud solution app that in a way integrates everything from data catalogs to lineage, to quality, to privacy and governance in one end-to-end collaborative application. And with collaborate means that what we tend to do, or we try to do, is to actually invite people to actually contribute with content, with context, right? Enriching anything that we already found or find when we ingest metadata from data sources like Databricks, okay? So pretty much what we're trying to do is to actually get a system where you have enough content or context so that you can do and take the best decisions you can, and you have the evidences that in a way support the decisions that you have made. Pretty much that's it, okay? In brief, okay? Now, we do obviously a lot more than that, okay? But for you to understand what this is sort of all about, okay? So how do we approach, or have we approached this exercise with Leon, okay? So, I mean, it's no different from any other data source, okay? So a bit of an explanation of how everything typically starts. I mean, typically everything starts by connecting to a data source like Databricks. And this is no different from connecting to any other JDBC connection. You have, what, a driver, you have a connection string, you are being asked for credentials, and once you do that, you establish a connection, validate the connection is done, and you move on, okay? So pretty much that is what we've done. So you can see, I don't know if you can actually see, but there's a connection string, there's a connection parameter. That easy, no difference from anything else. Now, what is fundamental different is that once you do that, and sorry about this, it just got disconnected, you get to have opportunity to choose what sort of capabilities you want to make available to your users. And with capability, you can see them, or can see them as jobs that have been designed or built for a particular result. So things like capturing metadata, or maybe profiling, classifying, or maybe enforcing policies into Databricks, for example. Okay, so those are capabilities. And this is what we have here. We have 4 capabilities available. We're talking about ingestion of columns of tables or schemas of Databricks, exactly what we've seen before. And then we enrich all of that with additional metadata that comes from the Unity catalog. So there's all this Unity catalog, new metadata that we actually pulling and make available to the customers as well. And then there's all this thing around sampling, profiling, classification, and everything else. Okay, so that's pretty much the scope of the exercise that we've done. Okay, now you notice that I'm actually clicking pages so that I can actually save some time not having to navigate through the application, because we are very, very, very much strict on time. Okay, but once you've done that, what the engine will do is, and you establish the connection, what the engine will do is present everything that you have access. So you've connected with a user, a personal access token, and you have access to these particular schemas. Okay, and it allows you to actually choose exactly what you want to register. Okay, so in this particular case, you see that we've registered lineage demo, we've registered sales, we've registered TPCDS, TPCSF. Okay, sales is the data set or the data schema that we've just saw from Leon. Okay, when you do that, it allows you to actually specify how often you want to do that synchronization, how often you want to bring that information out of Databricks. Not only that, he also asks you where do you want to keep that. Okay, so where you want to have that information structured in Collibra, in what sort of communities or domains, or where in the tree, on a branch of a tree, you can actually find all of that information. Okay, and obviously, if you wish to profiling, if you wish to actually classify all of that information, you will see some results of that later. Okay, so this is how people typically start. I have a data source, I decide exactly what I want to do, and boom, they start. Once they do that, the engine will take care of a number of things for you. For example, here what we see is I'm looking at the dim customer table that Leon has just shown before, and all this metadata that I've brought from Unity catalog, which typically is not there, right? We don't, until recently, there's nothing like a metastore ID or catalog names or something like what is this table, is it managed, is it not managed, is Delta, is not Delta. So this is all things or metadata information that is brought by Unity catalog, okay? So we also have the opportunity to do some sort of profiling. I mean, we don't really want to be accurate with this, okay? The purpose is not to actually have a perfect profile. We're not going to profile all the data sources, right? Not all the columns of all the tables. The idea is to see if there's anything here that could be clearly maybe an outlier, something that could potentially indicate that there's something wrong with the quality of the data, something that you could potentially identify immediately just by looking at this, if there's anything that you should be worried about, and write some sort of remediation plan or something like that, okay? Finally, and most importantly, is all these things about classification. Classification is the fact that, or is this capability whereby just by looking at what I have in the data, the sample data, try to understand what that is. And typically all starts by having suggestions, like, for example, I have an 84% confidence level that this is a date and time, or 76% confidence level that this is a data time. And then I have a few already accepted. Why? Because I've accepted them myself, or I actually suggested that the engine should accept those automatically if they reach a threshold, say 90%. Okay, 90%, don't push a button, I accept that for you. Okay, so, and this is important because this is the base for all your data access policies. When we will be doing policies and building design policies and access policies, we will be looking at those things. Okay, we will be saying things like, hey, if I have a likelihood of something being a name, I want to protect it. If I have some likelihood of something being a social security number, I want to protect it. Okay, so this is one of the first things that we would be looking at. With row-level filter for security and the exercise that we've done, for example, you see that there's something here which is a store. I mean, store, I don't really have simple ways to have an engine to classify if this is a store or not unless he actually learns for a while. But you can always create new classifications yourself. That's what we've just done. That indicates a store. And I will be using that to actually limit or restrict who has access to what store sales numbers, for example, this sort of things. Okay? So I don't want to take much longer on this, but the exercise, we've went that fast to actually include some of the results that we've done with DQ pushdown, which is something that, if not mistaken, is about to actually go live, GA, if I'm not mistaken, right? So we've done that. Okay, so what's the purpose here? The purpose is to actually get all of that information available to the users, because some of that may actually be interesting, or you should probably want to know about before you make decisions. You may want to know that this 87% of completeness may not be enough, and you want to make some sort of adjustments, for example. Okay? And again, then we have lineage. I mean, and in this point, what we do is actually fairly simple. I mean, Unity Catalog already does a great job at actually getting all that information for me. So it makes all of that available on REST APIs, on system tables. All I do is to collect that and somehow present it. But obviously, it then allows me to actually stitch with everything else that I have. So in this particular case, for example, if you look closer, I have all this connected with Tableau reports, for example. So I can actually have a lineage diagram or a graph from where the data was or started to where they actually ended, who's actually consuming and how they are consuming all of that information. So this is technical lineage, and this is something that has been recently done, is going to be available now in beta in beginning of July, if I'm not mistaken, and is the result of something that we've done with Unity Catalog and the recent system tables that have, I don't know, maybe released maybe a couple of weeks or months, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, GA, but we've been working on this for a while now. So, and we don't stop there, okay? So being all this around assets and relationships, I mean, again, we've mentioned that this is a collaborative approach to data governance. So here what we see is that we've invited someone from privacy, for example, to actually establish and define what of all of that information could be potentially PII or PI or restricted and which may not be, and none of that, okay, for example. Or have someone from business defining what is an employee within human resources, or what might be, and I cannot read much, a sales under the sales partner integration. This is the Tableau report, for example. Okay, so this is the Tableau report that is actually consuming from all of this information that I have already ingested here, dim customers and fact sales and all of that stuff. Okay, I have data products which have been produced and already been consumed by someone who has requested access and got access accepted, granted. Okay, so these are the sort of things that we've done with just that simple data set, okay? Now, the second part of the demo or the presentation will all be around protect. And now we can actually use this simple, unique place to actually design and define policies and data access policies and rules to actually, and have those rules enforced in Databricks so that we can limit who has access to what information, what data, when, okay? So, but before I do that, I don't know if Todd, Leon, you want to say something? So show something?
Microphone working? Yeah, okay, good. I just wanted to quickly show you, so you saw what the Collibra processed the data. Which one is it?
So what do you want to see?
The other. This, I did that as well, yeah. So let me just go to sales. So what you can see here, so Collibra has actually processed the metadata, it's looked at the data, and it's identified, for example, on deemed customer, that name is PII. So what it's done is it's added additional tags automatically through the API to say basically there's a special tag that identifies this particular column as PII column, and you can see it's added a whole bunch of other tags, and this all also gets surfaced in Collibra, and you can see, you know, potentially what it identified as the meaning of this particular column, and what kinds of things, what kind of information should be attached to that in terms of additional metadata. So that's it's kind of done it across the board with a bunch of different tables and metadata in there in terms of columns. Now, the other thing so obviously we've got APIs that Collibra is using to be able to surface all this metadata, but the other thing that makes it really simple is we've now got the system tables in Unity Catalog, and there's information schema here. And this actually gives the ability to see all the metadata across all of your catalogs. So if I run this, you can see it's got information about every single catalog, every single table, and every single column that exists in that table. And it's got all this metadata that can actually be accessed as a query directly in Databricks and surface all this information out to, in this case, Collibra, or whatever purpose you might have to surface this. That's it for now. So then the next stage in the demo.
Okay, so, I mean, before I do that, okay, so I'm not sure if you actually noticed that we've been pushing tags, right? So it's something that is still in private preview, that's fine. But the idea is that we push tags for a purpose, which obviously in our case is to protect and restrict access or control access. But we also have information there that could be potentially context, right? I can share something that says, well, if I'm looking at data and I find that there's a name which has been encrypted, so why is it encrypted? Well, it's encrypted because it's PI or it's PII, and it's actually a name of a customer which happens to be restricted. So that is what I meant with adding or pushing information that is available to us to systems like Unity Catalog, so that it can actually help explain your experience there, right? So that's the idea. And these are just simple examples of things, but it could be potentially anything that we have available, okay? Cool, so now this is the part that I like most, okay? So let me see. Let me just go and find, and not this one. Getting lost here with so many windows. This one. Okay, so for the purpose of the exercise here around data access controls, I've set up something fairly simple. Okay, so I have a few personas. I have myself. I don't know if you can actually see all the information here, but yeah. Okay, so myself, I am an admin. I configure access policies. I have access to everything. I've been granted access to all the information available, so I can see it all. Okay, and then I have Cliff, Joanne, and Preston. They are all store managers, and they obviously, as store managers, they have their own stores they manage, and they should be able to see all the sales numbers for their stores, but only for their stores, right? But they should not be able to see any contact information by default, okay? So that is pretty much what has been set up, okay? So the way we've actually distributed all these people around stores, and I can show it there, is something like this, okay? So that explains a bit the exercise so everyone understands. Okay, so we have plenty of number of stores there, and I have access to all of them. You see my face over there, pretty much everywhere. And then we have, for example, Cliff, which owns Melbourne. We have Joanna, which owns Auckland and owns Wellington, okay, for example. And we have Preston, that is actually being assigned to Perth, and he will find out that when he gets there, something is not quite right, and he doesn't really have the sales numbers that he's looking for. Okay, so, and we're going to be, part of the exercise is how can we actually grant Preston access to the sales numbers from Perth, and how can we actually give Joanna the numbers for Wellington and access to account information because she wants to launch a campaign, sort of come to visit sort of campaign. It's a new store and she wants people to actually join her on some sort of event, and she needs names, addresses, phone numbers, and such, and things like that. So how does all of that work, okay? So for you to understand, okay, briefly, I don't expect you to learn all of this stuff, but this is pretty much what we're saying is, okay, by default, anything which is, I hope that helps understand a bit, anything which is address or city or credit card number or maybe an email or first name or bank account number, yes, or last name, they should be protected by default, okay? And I'll show you, for example, one which could be potentially an email. It doesn't look that difficult. It's easy to understand. So anything which has been classified as an email, I just apply a masking. In this particular case, I define that should be a default masking, okay? That's it. That's nothing else, okay? So anything that has been classified as email, it will be protected. Notice the same goes for anything else. Notice that there's this warning here, which tells me that something has failed. It failed because, to be honest, in this data set, there's nothing like a credit card number, so there's nothing to apply. Okay, so in fact, this policy does mean nothing. It's not going to do anything, right? Okay, but it's an anticipation of if tomorrow you have changing the data set and you do have something like a credit card number, you would be immediately protected. Okay. Now we have the exceptions, and the exceptions could be things like, okay, cool, I know that there's a name, I want to protect it, but what happens when I discover that this is not a name of a customer, it's a name of a store, or a name of a product, is a name of something else which is not restricted, is not PII. I want unprotected. Okay, so pretty much what I do is exactly that. Okay, so if, for example, if I happen to see that this order, I call it order, meaning not restricted. Okay, so if I find that this is something that is not restricted, data category, I don't mask, okay, to anyone. That's pretty much what it does. Okay, and for example, there may be the case of Joanna that we will see later, which is, yes, it's the name of a customer, it is protected, but because you're going to launch that campaign, you need access to the customer's emails and addresses and phone numbers. I need that information to be unprotected. And I can actually make sure that that information is unprotected for a number of days, okay, from day 1 to day 5 or 7. Okay, that's pretty much how that works. So anything which is PII, I don't mask if it happens that this lady or the person belongs to this particular group. Okay, I call it direct marketing so that everyone sort of later understands what this is all about. But it could be HR, marketing, campaign, whatever that is. Okay. Cool, so let's go. I mean, I think with that, there's a brief explanation of how things look like. Now, evidences to things like row-level security. Okay, so I'm connected by myself, so you notice that I have all access to all the 7 stores, to the 93 unique customers. I do see all the sales numbers from all my stores again, okay? So one same dashboard. Notice that being me, I have access to all the customer information, which obviously otherwise would be PII and protected. So I have all access to all of it, okay? Now, if I go and connect with, for example, Cliff, and this is exactly the same dashboard, okay? It's just that I have some row-level security functions applied that limit what he actually sees. So he only sees 2 stores, the 2 stores that happen to be in Melbourne, 41 unique customers. He has the sales numbers, but the customer information is protected, okay? I connect with someone like Joanna, and you notice that Joanna also has 2 stores, but those happen to be in Auckland, 39 unique customers, and again, the customer names are protected, okay? And finally, I have Preston, and here is where we start with the first use case. Sorry. So Preston gets to the store in Perth and finds that it doesn't really have a number, doesn't have nothing, okay? So what has been what he does. I mean, first thing I would start complaining. I mean, come on. But anyway, the point being is that it doesn't have to. So the first thing that he would do is see if there's any way, something within Collibra in this particular case, that could actually help him. And to be honest, what he would do is find out if there's any data set, any data product that he could actually have access to or request access to. Now, I will be taking a few shortcuts here because obviously all of this is an exploration exercise. You need to understand exactly which data set is the one that you're looking for, okay? And for that, we have, I mean, you can actually go and find who's behind that, who actually in some way participates in what sort of roles, who's the owner, who's the steward, who's actually the expert, so that you can actually ask questions. And he has all this information about social endorsements, how much I have 4 or 5 stars, any comments, and all of that stuff, information that is available to you to actually understand if that's something that you wanna use. In our particular case, we'll simplify things. I mean, we do know that I have all these tables, which are actually the tables that I wanna have access to. I could actually go and find all of that information, who's the responsible, and ask questions. But for the sake of the exercise, all I will do is simply go and add to the basket, okay? Obviously, this is a process that if you have a big number of data sets to look for, it can consume some time, okay? And for that purpose, there's something else that actually will help you limit the number of results and all of that stuff. But for the sake of this demo today, we've just limited the exercise to a few data sets, okay? So I've added this to the basket, if I'm not mistaken, yeah? So I go and just check it out, like anywhere else. So what I do is check it out, and I'm asked for a reason why I'm requesting access to this data set. I will simplify things. I do ask for example, when do I need this by and for how long? I will simplify this as well. Doesn't really matter. I will be asked for a purpose, which I would just choose one. Okay, and then who I'm asking access to? Well, I'm asking access for myself, Preston. Sorry. Okay, so what this does is to actually trigger a process whereby someone will be invited to either reject or approve this request, okay? So again, could be as complex as having people voting on that request. We've simplified, and it just requires someone else's approval. So, and this is me, okay? So if you look at, I will get a task, which right now I probably have 2, yes? And I just go and approve, okay? So again, shortcut, obviously I would be looking at understanding exactly what is being asked, for what purpose, what sort of implications that can carry if I accept, any reasons why I should not accept this sort of thing. But for the sake of the exercise, we say that it's all good. I mean, I could actually build diagrams to show if this same request has been granted to someone else, so that it simplifies things, okay? But right now, it's all good, and I approve. Okay, so added back to Preston, you'll notice that he will also get a task in his basket in the task list, which is pretty much just something that he needs to accept, acknowledge what are the data sharing agreements. Let's move this one a bit, and that's it. And at that point, he will actually have access to that information, okay? So now, typically people, what they do is to integrate with some sort of ticketing system so that they get all this stuff resolved next day, or if in the best of the luck, or the next week. But in our particular case, we get all of that done immediately. So if I do refresh this dashboard, now I should be able to see that store sales information, okay? And again, he has access to Purse now. He has this one unique store, the 20 unique customers, all the sales numbers, and the customer information protected, okay? So we do have time for one last exercise, which is Joanna, okay? So if I connect back to Joanna, I need to say before I close and everyone leaves that if you do actually have questions, or if you have any interest in something particular, I will be myself at the booth downstairs at the Expo 707, Collibra. So if you have any questions, happy to answer any questions that you have, okay? Joanna, okay, so Joanna, notice that she has 2 total stores, 39 unique customers in Auckland. She's missing Melbourne, okay? So something has been going wrong, okay? And the reason was that there was a mistake when the policy was being built, which I'm going to correct. Now, typically, the way that would go is she would raise a ticket in Collibra, which ticket would be assigned to someone, there would be a plan, and someone would go and look at the policies, okay? So again, I would go to me, so I resolve everything. So, and I'll go into protect, and if I go into the data access rules, notice that there's this show AQL, BNE, that's my row level filtering functions. Okay, so notice that I have one for Wellington, and the error was something stupid, to be honest. Okay, instead of actually showing the store WLG01 to anyone which belongs to the WGLV01 store, I've actually added. Okay, so if I do that and if I change this, obviously this is something that would pick up and run and sync. We don't really want to wait for that, so let me just do that myself. Update. Okay, so I'm just pushing that so that we don't really have to wait much longer. And while this is actually re-evaluating all the policies, I will go and fix that second thing, which is she wants access to the custom information. Okay, again, typically it would be a request. We're talking about governance, right? So there would be a request to someone that would actually, again, either reject or approve. Okay, in our case, we're just going to simply add Joanna to that store. Okay, and we just do that by choosing Wellington 01 and save it. Have I done that? Yes. Okay. Right. So if we wait a while until this actually processes, if I go back to Joanna, if I refresh, it may take a few seconds more. Oh my God. Sorry about this. So you see that now she has 3 stores. That's Wellington, the one that she was missing before. And she still has 56 unique customers. And I guess this is not yet time to actually process, but soon enough she would actually have this unprotected as well. Okay. And with this, I'm done. Okay, so hope you liked it. Okay.
And
Jonah, shall I change this back to you?
thank you so much. I was just thinking, should we have a few minutes if anyone would like to share or have a question that they could share with the group?
I had 2 questions. One was when you guys were showing the Databricks Unity catalog, when you looked at the tables and you went to the columns, you guys, I went to my own Unity catalog for my company and noticed that tags was not one of the elements displayed. Is that because we have not tagged the data, and if I did tag the columns, it would be presented, or is that some feature that maybe we haven't unlocked?
That feature is currently in private preview.
Got it.
The tag. So it should be going into public preview very soon. I think it was announced this morning, if I'm not mistaken. So that will be available there soon. So there's APIs that you can use to retrieve tags and assign tags, and it will be eventually available in the system tables as well.
Got it. And when you showed there, you manually provided all those tags, right? It wasn't a feature that just discovered and
so the
tagged
tags
data
that you saw that on the schema itself are the tags that were pushed down from Collibra.
Okay. But Databricks isn't doing some sort of data insight to come up with tagging strategies on the data.
So I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen there, but at some point, yeah, we will have, obviously, we've got Lakehouse IQ, so that's going to have a mechanism to be able to identify PIIs as well, right? What the mechanism for that would be, I'm not clear.
Got it. And then with the Collibra row-level security capabilities, are those basically grants and things that you're able to actually apply to Databricks?
Yeah,
such that even without Collibra, you could get the same row-level security from
so
Databricks directly?
The features you saw, so the protect is a specific feature that's Collibra feature, but and you can obviously define rules through Collibra, but the way that gets pushed down to Databricks is we've got column masking functions, and we've got row-level security functions. So you can just apply them to your tables, and the function that you define is what will be actioned or what will be enforced from a governance perspective, from security perspective, when you run the query, right? So you didn't see that bit in Unity Catalog, but that feature is currently also in private preview, but it's coming very soon. So today, for example, you can do dynamic views, and you can do similar row-level security and column-level masking with dynamic views, but that requires you to have an additional view as well as the table. Now you can just apply the functions to the tables directly without defining a view, and it will automatically be actioned.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And I think we can do one final question.
Thank you for the presentation, actually. Do we have APIs to push all these policies
Sorry?
all the way to
Is the
UC?
question to Databricks ourselves?
Collibra.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Do we have APIs to push these policies all the way down to UC?
We do, but they are not yet publicly available.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I guess that's what you were asking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously we've got APIs in Unity Catalog that are exposed, and then Collibra just implements functionality to actually call those APIs and push the policies down. So I think the bit that has not been yet, it's not yet available, is the bit to push it down through the APIs.
With that, thank you so very much. And I think if you have questions also specifically around the Unity Catalog features, have a talk with your solution architect too, and they'll help you with that. So thank you very much.
Okay.